I did want to watch this. This is from 5 days ago from North Star UK. And it's the mechanical arms race that kills online games. So, I feel like a lot of games are dying right now. And I mean, a lot of games are literally dead. There's a video right here of Ubisoft entirely being fucking collapsed. So I felt like this video was pretty relevant. I want to watch this just real quick. I want to see what this is about. What this mechanical arms race is. Actually, also, the sounds from PoE kind of worked for the other video, but not this one. I don't believe it.
Multiplayer games, particularly player versus player games, are a very difficult thing to get into. No other type of entertainment media has the minimum skill requirement that can be found, particularly in modern titles. For decades, gamers have been enjoying and mastering a huge variety of games. And as the medium ages and the technology that drives these experiences improves, what gamers are capable of continues to expand.
Increasingly, I mean, people have gotten so good at games now. And not even just like really fast or really skillful, but they've gotten super intelligent. They've gotten beyond capabilities that you would even imagine. I saw some video, I think it was just like a short on YouTube, of some dude who built a computer inside of a video game. And it was Terraria. Like, what? And I think he played a game on it. I'm not too sure. But I know he built the fucking computer, and it worked. Like, that's insane. How do you even... Your IQ is more than Einstein, bro. Seriously.
A staple for so long now that some have played their entire lives. Some have even built multi-million-dollar careers. Professionals who play games competitively at live events in front of millions of spectators and fans, all by refining their craft over tens of thousands of hours. The rise of the competitive gamer has been nothing short of meteoric, but it does make you wonder, what happens when everyone you play against is super competitive? Competitive culture in gaming is rife and touches every game, whether it fits or not. Sweats.
Just before, like, to answer that question, what happens when everyone is, like, super good? Games become less fun. Now, not always, because if you're just playing with some buddies who are really, really good and whatever, you're playing, like, Borderlands or some other, like, I don't know, some meaningless game, really, that's not online, player versus player, then it's okay. But if it's online, player versus player, and everybody's always super good, everything always becomes less fun, because games are supposed to be escape mechanics, not skill checks. That's the little piece of that I have.
Tryhards, cheaters. Familiar accusations to those who inhabit the online gaming space.
Yeah, BattleBit.
You
That's a
can't
good
go 20
game.
minutes in an online forum without someone complaining about someone else. And while extremely common, it's not always unfounded. Play any online game long enough, and you're bound to run into someone who takes it extremely seriously, who treats it like a day job, despite the clear absence of pay or even recognition. Someone who has optimized the game down to the finest details through thousands of hours of trial and error. Is this a bad thing? Like, sure, you can do whatever you like with your free time, but does this have any sort of notable...
Again, depending on the game. You know, if... yeah. Depending on the game. If it's Elden Ring or whatever, you know, Ray, I'll give you a little bit of a pass. But not much. You don't get much of a pass, okay? But if it's games like that, whatever. It'll be fun. It's cool. It's whatever. If it's Call of Duty and you're in the top 5%, I mean, the game's not fun for you anymore. It's a job. It's sweating your fucking ass off. I only have 3,000. Yeah, you only have 3,000 hours. Which, if you were pretty much anybody else, I would say you were a fucking nerd. And you need to go outside and get some help. and also stop spending money on the game. But it's okay. You're chill, and I love you, so you're great. So that's why you get a pass. Okay. Don't worry. But it's only you. But yeah, like, if I'm playing PoE with somebody who has 3,000 hours, great time. They can teach me things. Whatever. Or Elden Ring, who has 600 hours. They can teach me things. But if I'm playing in a whole game of people of 600 hours in Call of Duty, it's way less fun. It's not a good time. I don't want to play the game. I'm done. I'll play 2 games and I'm done, because it's annoying.
Full impact outside of annoying the occasional Redditor? Could competitive culture, for example, kill off a game's player base?
Yes.
In today's video, we're going to dissect the way player skill influences online games. Look at some examples of games that might have been affected, and potential
I might go into that a little bit later, but I'm going to let him speak on it for a little
ways
bit.
that these things can be mitigated. Let's cover some important terminology first. The skill ceiling is the measure of the potential peak performance in a game. It's not generally quantifiable, but it becomes fairly apparent through a deep understanding of a game's mechanics. The skill ceiling depends by and large on what the game lets you do, willingly or not.
Yes.
This limit may rise or fall depending on updates or discoveries made by players. It's something that is actively coveted by the more competitively focused, for fun or profit. In that vein, you have your own theoretical skill ceiling that might be different to the game's. A maximum ability level dictated by many variables.
Some people just can't be good.
Age, natural ability,
they just can't.
Or available playtime. Conversely, the skill floor is the minimum performance required to play something. It's rarely the focus of conversation outside of games that have different methods of play, like unique builds or characters. The skill floor is at its lowest when it comes to single player.
Assassin's Creed Mirage, Assassin's Creed Shadows, fucking Ubisoft anything is a fucking joke. It's so funny. I love it.
As these are often designed to be extremely approachable, customizable experiences, fit for any level of play. The use of virtual opponents, or AI, means that players can make a game as hard or as easy as the developers allow them. When it comes to multiplayer games, however, it's rarely that simple. That
game should only ever be played in VR. I think it just makes it way better.
It's not just dictated by the developers, but by other players as well. For example, to play at a certain rank in a competitive game, it might demand a much higher skill floor for it to be enjoyable. The game might have a lot of mechanical depth or meta builds that put you at a disadvantage if you don't keep up with them. You might start a game late in its life cycle and find yourself behind in its progression. These things can change how accessible a game is to a general audience, particularly the casual crowd. Much like you have your own skill ceiling, you likely have your own skill floor too, which is essentially your tolerance for how bad you can be at a certain game before you quit. More experienced gamers might have higher standards for themselves, but they might still be performing above average compared to most people, but it's not enough for them specifically. The skill floor is why game balancing.
I've never heard of somebody
modifying a game.
It's sick in VR. No, it's fucking amazing. Yeah, it's so good in VR. It's so sick. I don't think I've ever seen anybody play the other version of it. VR is just easily the best way to play. But I've never heard anybody refer to a personal skill floor like that. I've never heard that before. That's actually really interesting.
Keep the experience fair is a significant part of post-launch work. It's so important that even the level of game balancing must be balanced. Don't balance enough and people will feel cheated or forced to play against people who have unfair advantages. Balance too much and nothing sticks out and everything becomes stale and samey.
Yep, that's very true.
This is all to say that multiplayer games
need to be unique. Like, that's the reason why the Tommy gun's so iconic. Why the AWP or the L19A1, I believe it's called in most games. You know, these guns are so iconic for a reason, because they have characteristics. They're always the same. You know, the Tommy gun usually has a drum mag or that stick mag. It fires fast, all that stuff. Like, they need to be iconic. It can't just be what's a good game with all the same weapons? Nothing stands out. Starfield. It can't be Starfield. It's just the same shit, different skin. Nobody cares. It's boring.
System, one that is maintained both by developers and players, with people entering and leaving constantly. These ecosystems also mean that active player count is something that is tracked for many different titles, and you can directly see how well a game is performing in the public eye. The launch of a multiplayer game tends to be the point in which it has the most players. Not always the case, but it holds true for most anticipated AAA releases. At this point, both the skill ceiling
9.9 times out of 10, it's the case.
And floor are at their lowest. People are still getting adjusted to the game, and the full spectrum of experience level can be encountered. This is usually when you'll run into the largest number of casual players. After some time, the player count usually starts to decline. This isn't really an indication of a game's success or failure. Games built off a lot of hype will invariably...
Elden Ring's not a very fair example for this, because this happens with every single single-player game. This is the natural peak of everybody who bought it and ended up completing it. You know, all these people, these are all the casual people who ended up buying the game. They hated it. Like, this chunk is the people who hated it and completed it and never touched it again. You know, that's how it is. Every single-player game you see is like this. It always will be, because, especially if it's really big, everybody's going to buy it, they're going to hate it, or they're going to love it and finish it instantly, and then everybody's going to leave, and these are the people who's left.
Have that hype fade. And even really well-managed games will struggle to maintain their initial player base. At this point, both the skill ceiling and skill floor start to creep up. The logic behind this is that you're much more likely to stick with a game you understand well over one you don't. Therefore, those players who struggle to play the game are more likely to quit, and the players at the bottom of the skill ladder become less frequent opponents, either because they leave to play something else.
Those Doritos made me really hungry. Now I kind of want a snack.
Or because they just get better. This rise in average skill is extremely apparent for games that don't see a steady influx of new players. As a game continues to age, this cycle continues. Experienced players get better and better, and the player base slowly bleeds active players until they die, whether that be in 10 days or 10 years. This is a typical multiplayer game life cycle. It's not an exact science. A lot of games' post-launch success depends on what the developers and marketers do with it. Some games can even eventually eclipse their initial player counts, but over a long enough period of time, this will be the fate of every game. YouTube videos behave much the same. They get most of their views early on, but after a while, only the more dedicated fans come back to rewatch them.
Yeah, this is how it is for every single video. And if he clicks reach, the impressions does the same thing, because YouTube stops pushing it. Pretty much I think every single video that I've posted has done this exact same thing. It's what it looks like over the course of a long time. This is what it looks like.
I mentioned that players will leave games that they are bad at. I'm sure if you've played a large enough variety of games, you've invariably come across one you didn't click with at all, got destroyed in a couple attempts and uninstalled, in some way failing to reach your required skill floor. But I also mentioned that skill floor is dictated in part by the people playing the game. So the question is, does the skill floor play a significant factor in player retention?
Yes and no. Because if the skill floor is lower, it's easier for people to get into the game and continue to play it and feel like they're getting better and better. However, the game also has to be good. So I think the biggest part of it is just if the game's good. Like if you look at Dark Souls or Elden Ring or, you know, any game you can think of like that, the skill floor really isn't that low. It's pretty fucking high. But people keep playing these games. They play these games and push their heads against the same boss for tens and hundreds of hours. Because it's a good game and they want to play it. I think it's much the same with any of these games. You know, with Call of Duty and stuff like that. If the skill floor is low, and that's why they make them the skill-based matchmaking so bad, especially with Call of Duty, because it makes people think the skill floor is lower if they're bad. But yeah, I think it does play a role, and I think people know that. I think that's why that's kind of become a thing, Yeah, I think it does. Those are your teammates. I love this game. BattleBit's so fun. Oh my god.
BattleBit Remastered is a multiplayer FPS game that left early access last year. It was developed by a very small team and did extremely well after it got some traction on social media. You may have seen clips of it before, or maybe even played it. The gameplay is very akin to early Battlefield, but boasts a low poly look that makes it a lot more approachable,
so fun, man.
especially for players living the low-spec gamer life. The modes are strictly team-based, and you work alongside many other players to win. It peaked at over 86,000 players post-launch, but since dropped to a few thousand just under a year later. By most accounts, a success story. However, some community members suggest that the project was mismanaged, and that the development speed was too slow, which meant that it lost the potential of becoming an FPS staple.
But the problem is their development speed really wasn't too slow. It's the expected development time is too short. I love BattleBit. Yeah, great. I actually didn't expect you to play it, Ray, because you said you play fighting games, stuff like that. So I didn't even expect you to play this game. So fun, man. Such a good game.
Cool. Now, I would describe myself as pretty good. I would say at least better than most.
That was a nice shot. Let me watch it again real quick.
Which meant that it lost the timing of becoming an FPS.
Hold on, let me finish that thought, because I don't think I did. The expected development time that people have nowadays is very short, and that's why the development time for them was so long, because they're a really small team and people expect content because it's what they get now. But there's a small team and they can't get that, so yeah, their development time was too slow, unfortunately.
FPS staple. Now, I would describe myself as pretty good.
Oh, that's
good.
That was a good one.
I do have a KD of over 2, which I'm very proud of. However, I'm acutely aware of how high the mechanical ceiling goes. And it has all the hallmarks of a first-person shooter with a crazy high skill ceiling. Mid-air strafing, snap aiming, sprint reloading, meta builds, just to name a few. The game certainly does not discourage players from playing in a very sweaty way. Despite all of this, early BattleBit was actually a very casual environment. Most people weren't very good, and most of the clips generated from the game were from people messing around with the proximity chat. However, as the average player got better and better, and understood more of the mechanics and the maps, it became progressively harder to play the game casually. Voice chat got quieter, and the focus shifted towards keeping up with other players. The game quietly lost what had made it popular to begin with. In my opinion, the game's primary shortfall is that it failed to nurture what should have been its main strength, teamwork, and instead bolstered an extremely self-sufficient, mechanic-focused playstyle. It doesn't take much playtime to realize that you interact with your team very little.
That's why Battlefield, like the original Battlefields that were so good, like Battlefield 4, you could have these people who would build up defenses. You could have these people. I played it like 2 weeks ago with my friends. There were only like 2 servers, really. Wow. How many? Hold on. Wow. Oh, this is the playtest. Wow. That's not that great. Yeah. $82,000 dropped down to 15, got a little bit more, and it's gone. Yeah. Yep. That's sad. It's a fun game, but like the reason why Battlefield 4, even Battlefield 5, I think Battlefield 5, yeah, because Battlefield 1 was really old. Battlefield 5 was like World War II-ish kind of era. Battlefield 5 or I think it was World War 1. I don't know. Battlefield 5, Battlefield 4 really encouraged teamwork because you could build up defenses, your teammates could resupply you, it was very important if you got revived, and you would get revived quite frequently. And yeah, the snipers, I mean, depending on the map, snipers were very important. But Battlefield didn't have, or BattleBit didn't have a lot of that. You know, I never really got revived in BattleBit. Nobody ever revived me, and I just always held medkits until I died. So, yeah, I can understand that.
They've seemingly kept buffing things that made working solo more convenient.
Yep.
Like the healing bandages, that over time have not only increased in number, but also heal you more and are applied quicker.
Wow.
At this point, you must force yourself to team play, otherwise you're just running from objective to objective, shooting people on the way, which not only gets old very quickly, but when mechanical skill is the primary focus, not playing well matters a lot more, since there's no other aspect of the game to fall back on, like interacting with your team. I think even the devs noticed this too, as they added a squad preference screen, where you can choose how serious you want your squad to be.
Really? So that wasn't always a thing.
An overwhelming focus on mechanics that drives non-mechanical, casual players away, whether intentional or not, is the crux of the problem, and BattleBit is far from the only game that suffers from it.
Okay.
I describe it as the mechanical arms race, and it's a really tough thing to quantify, but it's noticeable on both an individual game scale and across the games industry as a whole. In some way, either as a symptom or a cause, games get too competitive for their own good, and bleed their casual audience because of it.
Okay,
it's
I get what
probably
you're
not
saying.
just for competitive games, but casual ones too. It's often such an issue that you can almost tell how competitive a game is going to be in the future just by playing it for a few hours. Answer this question.
That game was Spellbreak. I think it's Spellbreak. I think that was its name. Yeah, Spellbreak right there. This game was so good, but you played it like it came out, and 2 days later you could not play it because everybody who played it would instantly annihilate you every single time because they were so fucking good at the game. Like, I remember I came back months later and I literally couldn't even drop without dying. I couldn't do anything. Like, when it first came out, I could get a couple kills, I could do whatever, you know, I might be able to kill this person, do whatever, get top 5. Dude, I came back. Yeah, it was, I mean, it was fun when it first came out, but I came back a little while later and it was fucking destroyed.
Tell how competitive a game's going to be in the future just by playing it for a few hours. Answer this question for me. Have you ever played a new release, either alone or with friends, and had that thought creep into your mind that you're not going to be playing this game in a month, despite how fun it might be in the moment?
Yes. The first time I remember that, I was playing with a bunch of friends, and we were like, okay, this game's fun, but it's not that good. Back for Blood. It should have been so fucking good. It should have been the revolution to Left 4 Dead type games. It should have been like the next big fucking thing in zombie games. But it was just utter dog shit.
Or maybe you're playing a game and you suddenly become aware of how the game operates, and you can foresee what the rest of your playtime would look like. So what if I do that, you might be wondering. What does it matter if I play a game for 100 hours and then burn out after a couple months?
Depending on the game.
I still got my money's worth. For you, not really a problem. But it runs counter to what most multiplayer games companies are aiming for, and it's having serious implications for the gaming industry. Games as a service isn't all too new of a concept, but has surged in popularity as of late. The concept is simple. Games are supported post-launch with new content, and in turn you continue to play the same game, and continue to support that game through various means. This is why it's common for someone to have a main game that they play more often than others, as introducing new content to an old game keeps it fresh, and means that fans get more of what they know they'll like. This tends to work in favour of games companies too, as they get more money from the average player with much less development time. A 2023 study that surveyed over 500 games companies reported that 95% of them were aiming to release a live service game in the future.
95%.
The only limit to the system is that these games live and die by their ability to retain players, which involves not only keeping people interested year round, but also competing against other similar live service games for their attention.
Let me go back to that number. 95%. 5% of game companies that were interviewed said that they want to release or are planning to release a live service or games as a service type game in the future. Granted, they probably didn't ask every games company, but if we just take an estimation of if 95% of the people that they asked out of this survey, these games companies out of this survey that they asked said 95% said they were going to do it. If I were to take a guess, just a random estimation, probably about 55%, maybe more, of all of the games companies that you know and that are out there are going to release a live service game.
A live service game in the future. The only limit to this system is that these games live and die by their ability to retain players, which involves not only keeping people interested year-round, but also competing against other similar live service games for their attention too. If Apex Legends, for example, flopped on release, that likely would have killed the Titanfall IP right then and there. Potentially,
it did. Like, Apex was a good game, but Apex cannibalized Titanfall. Now they're just pouring all their effort into it. I don't even know if they're going to release a new Titanfall. They're just going to build Apex until it fucking dies, and then, oh, it's dead. Nobody likes it anymore. It's EA. What do you expect?
Alongside Respawn Entertainment. While the gaming industry is huge, there's only so many players to go around. So maybe sort of ironically, competition is fierce.
Yeah.
So what does this have to do with game mechanics? Well, you have to enjoy something about a game to continue playing it.
Excuse me. Helldivers is a game I need to play. I've not played Helldivers yet, and I need to play this game. I've been told so much about this game. It looks fucking great. I want to play it, just haven't played it yet. I need to play it.
There's only so many marketing tactics a game can pull.
But I'm broke.
And if you find a game too stressful or uninteresting, most people can't be manipulated forever. Even addicts will eventually drop games that stop treating them well. But casual players can drop a game over the smallest of things.
I don't know.
Which means that how a game handles its experience.
Don't be too certain of that. People die playing shit. Some dude died playing World of Warcraft. Some other dude, I don't know if he was playing, I think it was Overwatch. He's playing Overwatch, and his fucking town was flooding, and he said, nah, fuck that, I gotta finish my game.
Determines a lot about how it performs publicly. And since so many games are vying for your attention,
they were both Japanese. Or at least of Asian descent. I know that for a fact. I don't know if they're exactly Japanese or some other Asian ethnicity, but yeah. They're fucking crazy over in Japan, bro. Crazy motherfuckers.
Options to go elsewhere are usually extensive, which means that it's easier and easier for games to bleed casual players if they're not careful. New games must also compete with established ecosystems that have now been around for an incredibly long time. Counter-Strike, for example,
I couldn't tell what it was because it just looked like every other game that I've ever seen before.
20 years.
I didn't want to go back and look at it.
And as much as I'm sure veteran players love to poke fun at the game, how the game feels to play has been carefully refined for decades. Even now, Counter-Strike continues to break player records year over year.
I literally couldn't tell that this was Concord until I read it.
Example has been around for
let me go back to
which means that it's easier and easier for games to bleed casual players if they're not careful. New games must also
I couldn't tell this was Concord.
Compete with established eco.
It literally has no defining features. It's not interesting whatsoever. It looks like every other fucking game that's coming out right now. I couldn't tell what game this was.
Systems that have now been
Good
around
thing it's
for
not a
an
game anymore.
incredibly long time. Counter-Strike, for example, has been around for over 20 years at this point. And as much as I'm sure veteran players love to poke fun at the game, how the game feels to play has been carefully refined for decades. Even now, Counter-Strike continues to break player records year over year. It's kind of like picking between a friend you've known your entire life and a new person who may or may not be a better friend in the long run. You might try hanging out with this new person, but you know exactly who you're going back to should things turn bad. All of this means
Fair.
that producing a live service multiplayer game in such a saturated market is a serious gamble. Now, having a game flop because it fails to retain a casual audience is a very real issue faced by many in the space. When it comes to talking about skill in games, it would be silly not to talk about the elephant in the room, which is skill-based matchmaking. The idea is that a game measures your performance, usually through...
You're talking about Concord? You say you don't even know what Concord is? Oh. Oh, yeah? Oh, good. Good. Oh, good. Good. Yeah, good.
Some sort of rating system. And
oh, shit. Hold on one sec, Ray. Oh, shit. I'm gonna do this just for you.
So apparently,
yeah, you don't need to see any more. So Concord released not even a month ago. Well, I wasn't gonna do the whole video. I'll watch a little bit for a sec.
Did not cost. We all thought that it costed 100.
Let me just. I'm gonna go in here a little bit.
Through all of that and talk to this person extensively, for a long time. Ooh. And got some, I think, interesting information that I can share about Concord. And I think people will be interested about it. The reason that I wanted to talk about it is because some of the assumptions that I had made about the game were dead wrong.
Okay.
As far as how much
it cost. But what is it? I want to hear what
how much Sony really lost on it. So
okay,
the big thing you really need to know here about this is that Concord cost about $400 million to make.
There it is. Concord cost $400 million to make. Now, if I just go here, probably one of these first videos will be it. Nope. Well, you could probably see anyways. You could probably tell from the video reaction. The game's done. Like, Sony shut it down. It's not a thing anymore. It's done. Sony just lost $400 million because they thought it was promising. Yeah, get fucked. That's what Concord is. Back to this video.
When it comes to talking about skill in games, it would be silly not to talk about the elephant in the room, which is skill-based matchmaking. The idea is that a game measures your performance, usually through some sort of rating system, and then curates matches so you play with and against players of similar skill to you. The main benefit is that it provides tangible progression for players in ways that some games would lack otherwise. It also helps prevent less experienced players from getting stomped, and it allows games with smaller lobby sizes, like 2015's Rocket League or 2023's The Finals, to maintain a sense of fair play that wouldn't exist if things were random. Chances are, if you're watching this video on game mechanics, you likely have seen some strong opinions on skill-based matchmaking. You might even have some of your own. A common perception is that these systems, even when well managed, frustrate players and sometimes don't prevent the things they were designed for, like unfair matches. A long-term concern with skill-based matchmaking is that, almost against your will,
this game's gonna fail. Like, people are gonna like it because it's COD, but other than that, it's gonna fail. The skill-based matchmaking is retarded. The movement is the Omni movement thing that they're releasing puts the floor from here to here, and the ceiling moves with it too. I know it. I've been saying since probably Black Ops 3 or 4. Maybe, yeah. I'd say probably Black Ops 3 or 4, right around that era. In between that time frame, I was always saying, like, they need to stop making games every year because they're just shit. It's just the same thing, worse and worse, dumber and dumber for more and more casual people. Soon it's just going to be fucking Concord.
You're fast-tracked into a competitive arms race just to enjoy yourself.
It's
Since
sad,
everyone you
too.
play with has...
I think the zombies might be okay, though. That's the only thing I'm going to say. The zombies might be okay, and if it is okay, I might play it on Game Pass.
And usually expects a certain minimum level of ability. There's no opportunity for you to relax and maybe take things a little slower. Your reward for playing well is
True.
harder games, and your reward for playing casually is, well, losing. So in some way, you're left with no choice but to endlessly improve, even if focused gameplay isn't what you're looking for. On a larger scale, these systems also promote competitiveness and raise the mechanical skill of your average gamer, which in some ways is a good thing. The recent competitive push has allowed mainstream games to become more mechanically complicated and include greater depth, as your average gamer is a lot more competent at understanding new games than they were in the past. However, this does mean that multiplayer games
Ray, don't play Star Citizen, please.
in particular are harder to approach
I need you
at
alive.
a casual level. It's almost a requirement for any player versus player game to feature some sort of rank progression, as a lot of gamers have come to expect that whenever they're faced with human opponents. The near absolute saturation of competitive modes means that, oftentimes, non-competitive modes might as well be competitive anyway.
Okay. Nice. Fuck him up. Yeah. Damn. This guy's going off. Damn.
The Finals
Get 'em.
is a free-to-play, team-based, first-person shooter released at the end of 2023.
Yeah.
I've spoken about this
Really
game
good
before on
destruction,
this
too.
channel, but to give context here, it mixes a lot of different shooter styles to make quite an interesting blend of both familiar and experimental mechanics.
Do not plan on it.
The
Well.
game has a very
Good.
typical player
Good.
count story, a really strong start with over 200,000 players, and a slow decline as the months rolled on. As of May
Yeah.
30th, it's at the lowest player count it's ever had, although it looks like it's going to stay at around 15,000, a 94% drop in the
It's okay,
initial
I feel
player
that,
base
buddy.
over 6 months, which might sound bad, but for Embark Studios' first foray into gaming, 15,000 daily players is something new games companies would give anything for. I really enjoyed playing the Finals. It has a lot of fun with different mechanics.
Yeah,
like
the destruction,
environmental
that's sick.
destruction. It gives it a nice edge over more streamlined FPS games.
It's
It also
cool,
encourages team play in a
idea
really
too.
healthy way, as each class
Yeah.
has strengths and weaknesses that make it dependent on teammates to work effectively. The problem for me, and something that ultimately led me to stop playing the game regularly, was the matchmaking. My first impression of the game was extremely strong. I was really enjoying playing as each of the three classes, and the people I was playing against were admittedly not very good, and I felt a lot of control over whether our team would win or not. However, as I continued to play and win matches, I found that the matchmaking was putting me against increasingly difficult, and overall sweatier, opponents. Suddenly, the fun strategies I was implementing stopped working against players, and the potential scope of the mechanics began to narrow down. It even got to the point where I felt like I couldn't use certain character abilities, as they would almost universally achieve 0 results. I even
True.
eventually went entirely off the heavy class, as it felt too clunky, and I couldn't contribute positively. Very quickly, the game became just
Interesting.
another
That's
sweaty
really interesting.
shooter. Despite the fact that I never actually touched any competitive mode, I would find myself getting annoyed at certain classes and common matchups, and I wasn't having nearly as much fun as I was when I started out. It's not even
I
that the
feel that
game
with a
is
lot of
bad,
games.
it's a really well-made game with interesting mechanics. However, I was
That's the
hoping
problem. Like, I was saying earlier, people don't care so much if it forces you to play a certain way, but they also want the game to be good and fun. So, I mean, they don't want to be forced the whole time they're playing the game to play a certain way, But again, like with Elden Ring or certain other, like Wukong, Black Myth Wukong, the Yellow Brow, he's completely immune to all of a certain type of spell in the game. They don't do anything. He just shrugs it off like it's fucking nothing, and it usually has more negative effects for you if you try to fucking use it on him. So they don't care if it forces you into a certain way a little bit, as long as the game's good. But if it's not good, and if it feels like a task to play the game, they're not going to want to play it.
For a more casual experience, and it's not one I could find within the game's matchmaking.
Yeah.
But being disillusioned by a game due to its matchmaking does raise an interesting question. Is it really the system's fault to begin with? You may have heard this phrase before.
Huh. Yeah. I mean, yeah, as long as you're having fun, you're playing, right? As long as the game's good, you're playing. As long as you're having fun, you're playing. That's it. As long as you're not having fun, you're not playing. As long as it's not a good fucking game, you're not fucking playing the game. Is it really the system's fault? Yeah. I think, for just doing a quick think about it, I mean, I think I'd have to think a lot harder, because this is a broader question. But yeah, I think on just a quick thought of it, it's mostly the system's fault, if not entirely. Because if there was no system, like a skill-based matchmaking system in place, then people would have more freedom to implement more unique or fun techniques more frequently, and you'd be able to actually do that without feeling forced into an unfun, sweaty, or more taxing playstyle. You wouldn't be able to have fun. So yeah, like, just from a quick thought, I think, yeah, it is the fucking game's, like, the system's fault. Because if there was no system, people could have fun more times. Yeah, I think it is.
Given the opportunity, players will optimize the fun out of a game. This is a quote from Soren Johnson, one of the leads on Civilization 3. It suggests that some people view games less as an entertainment medium and more as an
That's not fair for all players. Because most players will not optimize the fun out of a game. Most players will play a game for 2 hours, maybe even an hour, eating Doritos and drinking a six-pack at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., because they just got off work being a technician or doing this or doing that, working at fucking the government, whatever they do, and they're just going to play a game for a little bit. A lot of people do that. It's what a lot of people, they play games to have fun. But some people will optimize the fun out of it, but some people also have fun optimizing it as well. So I don't think that's very true. I think there is a hint of truth to it, though.
optimization puzzle, one that, no matter the game, can be solved through either practice or understanding mechanics. The problem with solving, or even attempting to solve, a game is that it effectively becomes complete and no longer interesting. And the more games you play, the better you get at solving.
That was so fucking targeted.
And more as an optimization puzzle, one that, no matter the game, can be solved through either practice or understanding mechanics. The problem with solving, or even attempting to solve, a game is that it effectively becomes complete and no longer interesting. And the more games
That was so targeted, man. That was so targeted.
you play, the better you get at solving them, and the easier new ones become to solve. I mentioned earlier the concept of figuring out a game's systems, and knowing that eventually you'll stop playing. That's you effectively solving the game in your mind, almost seeing the future of what the game will offer, and deciding that, since you already know what's coming, it's not worth sticking around to see it.
Yeah.
The destiny of games is to become boring, not to be fun. Those of us who want games to be fun are fighting a losing battle against the human brain, because fun is a process, and routine is its destination. While this quote is more about gaming's place,
That was a deep...
because fun is a process.
The destiny of games is to become boring, not to be fun. Those of us who want games to be fun are fighting a losing battle against the human brain, because fun is a process and routine is its destination. This just requires a lot of thought to even respond to. Yeah, dang. Yeah.
And
Fuck.
routine is its destination. While this quote is more about gaming's place among society in general, I think it applies here too. The ultimate problem is that what makes a game interesting is some degree of uncertainty. If you knew how a strategy game was going to play out from start to finish, you wouldn't find it interesting. Like how tic-tac-toe stops being an interesting game to play once you know how to never lose. However, uncertainty is uncomfortable and something most people avoid fanatically in their day-to-day lives. The irony of gaming is that to enjoy it at its best, you must chase uncertainty and avoid optimization. It's why games like Rust and DayZ, relentless survival games, which from an outsider's perspective seem like a nightmare to play and manage, are insanely popular. There's a thrill to their uncertainty, that there's no guarantees from moment to moment. Even logging on doesn't guarantee you the same position that you're left with. Competitive gaming, both as a genre and a subculture, is about removing uncertainty in as many aspects as possible. And while professional gaming is a beloved subgenre of gaming, it directly defies games with more casual intentions, which means that games can lose their casual communities extremely easy if they're not careful. And since casual players tend to outnumber hardcore gamers by a significant margin, live service titles rely heavily on being able to retain them for long periods of time. But what can be done to counteract the mechanical arms race? It's a systemic problem that is reinforced by competitive trends in gaming. And while it seems like a far-reaching problem that's nigh impossible to solve, there are practical things that can be done on many levels to counteract it. On a personal level,
you're spending your
if
time
you feel
in,
like the games you play are becoming too stressful,
Tekken 8 Ghost Mode,
or they're just routinely frustrating, it's okay to switch to casual or more controllable single-player experiences. The concept of retiring from competitive games is a frequent phenomenon, especially for older gamers who have much less time to keep up with the race. Even just partially stepping away can do wonders for your enjoyment of games overall.
Why do you have to grind out a character? Rain is a character, right? I assume. Why you... Is it? I'm assuming it unlocks something just to improve. Okay, true.
Pick one competitive game to main, and then avoid all others.
You're
for game developers,
savage,
it's a difficult situation. No matter the type of multiplayer game, it's an open invite for players to try and optimize it. But the best course of action is to make something non-mechanical the primary selling point.
I thought this was a fucking Disney movie.
Multiplayer game, it's an open invite for players to try and optimize it. But the best course of action...
What?
...is to make something...
What the fuck is this? Megamind? This is Megamind's evil twin. Not Megamind. No, Mega Brow.
Non-mechanical the primary selling point. It could be story, or a social feature, or any number of things.
No, it's Destiny.
To make it competitive.
Yeah, you think it's an Inquisitor. That's what I'm saying. What the... It's Destiny. Look. Oh, yeah. That's what I thought at first. Like, I thought it was Disney.
If you want to make a competitive game, it's better to fully commit to a competitive experience, rather than having it be a small part of a wider game. It's important to note at the end here that gaming isn't necessarily fated to continually get more competitive. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that the opposite is happening. All one has to do is see what the most popular games of recent years are. Elden Ring, Baldur's Gate 3, Lethal Company. All games without any competitive underpinnings. It's also fairly evident through browsing online forums that there's a growing disdain for competitive elements in video games, particularly matchmaking algorithms. Maybe one day in the future, games might find a happy balance between casual and competitive all on their own. But until then, it's probably best to keep your head on a swivel.
Damn.
Thank you so much for watching. This is my first
You are
attempt at a
welcome.
larger project video. I might have missed some things.
Yeah, man. I think it's people who are killing it. It's people who it's people who maximize games. You know, they try to just become as good as they can, and it's not fun anymore. That's a good game, man, or a good video. Put that in the chat as well, so I have that for later. Yeah, good video, man. That was an absolutely great video. Give it a like.